Hello and good morning, MYM Insiders. How's everybody doing today? This is Rich Harshaw, and I am coming to you from Provo, Utah, of all places. I am in town visiting my son, and thought I'd give you a webinar from Utah, sort of Rocky Mountain High. Well, let's get going on today's topic. This is our strategic marketing webinar. We're going to talk about finding and telling the story. And, I look back at my career, and one of the things that I've been able to do well as I've been a marketing consultant and speaker is I've been able to capture the essence of stories and telling stories. But there's a lot to this art that I want to talk about today and just help you kind of understand a little bit. Now, this is one of those topics where just because we're having the webinar and I'm going to show you a bunch of examples doesn't mean that you instantly capture exactly how to do this. But I do want you to be thinking about it, and I want you to try to integrate it as much as is necessary. As you'll hear me say later, just because we're talking about storytelling doesn't mean that every time you ever open your mouth in marketing environment that it should have a story coming out of it. But it can be useful and helpful. So with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about storytelling. I'm just going to give my system a minute here to make sure that it's working properly. And it is. Okay. So the fundamentals really just boils down to this. People participate in stories, not just listen to them, which gives them a more active participation, listening into your marketing message. It's just a good way to engage people. Allows them to visualize what you're saying. One of the great things about telling stories is if you're telling a story, they are visualizing that story in their mind, and the picture that is being developed in their mind is very personal to them. They personalize it, so it looks very familiar to them. It's actually even more powerful than showing something like in a video. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't show videos and you shouldn't have videos. It means that a well-crafted story has the ability to personalize these experiences that are being visualized in the mind of the hearer. And that's what really holds the power. So that's what we want to try to get to here. You can't influence people if you haven't engaged them. And the emotion's going to come from this also, okay? We want to capture the imagination, use stories whenever possible. Now, again, like I've mentioned once, I'll mention a few more times, this is not to say that it's always about the story, but I think that it's more about the story than you probably think it is. Now, let me tell you what the opposite of a story is. And I'm being very generic. I'm speaking in very general terms right now. But the opposite of a story is telling somebody the facts in an antiseptic, nuts and bolts, here's what you need to know kind of a way. And this is what we generally tend to do when we communicate, especially in marketing, because we don't really know how to tell stories. That's why we're here today having this discussion, is so that we can improve on this skill. But we tend to say, well, here's what people need to know, and the information is the same that I'm communicating, so it doesn't really matter that I'm just giving them this antiseptic, nuts and bolts type of a treatment of this topic. In fact, some people say all of the story just adds fluff and it distracts from the nuts and bolts. But I would contend that it's exactly 100% the opposite, that the story is what engages and allows people to be willing and interested and engaged to hear those details, to understand those details, and to be able to really conceptualize what those things mean. So on the one hand, we've got nuts and bolts, we've got black and white, we've got information, we've got facts and data, we've got an antiseptic treatment of a topic. On the other hand, we have a way to explain things and describe things to people that really captures their imagination, okay? So let's talk about when and where to engage in storytelling, and then we'll go through multiple examples of each. The first one is in your identity, okay? You know, when we're talking about identity, the definition of identity is a way to instantly, definitively communicate with power and precision and passion who you are, what you do, what you're all about, and what people can expect when they do business with you. My experience is that if we can get some good stories to encapsulate that identity in, that it's going to be more powerful because people are going to want to engage. Again, that sounds redundant, and it probably is, but I'll show you examples of that in just a minute. And then that, of course, goes straight into your website, advertisements as well, reports, audios, videos, customer reviews, and testimonials. Think about it. A testimonial that says, we really enjoyed doing business with ABC is not the same as we were having this problem and we tried these solutions. We kept getting the runaround from other providers. In fact, my husband became ill because the thing couldn't get fixed. I'm being real general. I'm making this up on the spot, but you get the idea. Finally, we called these guys. Within just a few minutes, they were over. They looked at the problem, found that it really wasn't that serious after all. In fact, what we thought was going to be a $400 or $500 problem turned out to be just $49.95, the trip charge, and it didn't even require anything major. And my husband immediately, regained his health. Whatever. This is a story that illustrates the point that here's a company that does things fast, gets things done right, and finds solutions that are the easiest for the customer. But it's so tempting just to say we're fast and it's easy instead of telling the story, okay? Also, blogs and articles for your website, other purposes, are a great place to tell stories. So let's talk about your identity, telling your story. People want to know why they should do business with you, okay? That's the whole backdrop of the concept of identity, is trying to communicate with people, why is it that you should do business with me? You've got to stand apart from the crowd. Your story will make who you are and what you do more interesting and more relatable. My experience is that people want to do business with people, not with companies, not with huge soulless corporations. They want to do business with people. Now, we can find exceptions to that, and we can find lots of situations where people don't do business with a person. If you've ever done business with Amazon.com and their billions of dollars of sales would suggest that they do a lot of business with a lot of people, there's no people involved in it, and that's okay. But I think the utility value of ordering things online is probably much different than many businesses, particularly a lot of the companies that are part of our MWAM Insider program, remodeling contractors in particular. We've just got to look at it and say, do we want to be a company or do we want to have a personality? And I'm going to encourage you to have a personality. Okay, you'll be more interesting. Almost nobody else is telling a story, so you're going to win by contrast. The default position that people take is to say, here's the facts, ma'am. So when you start telling a story, it's more interesting. You got to know where to find the story, though. So let's talk about that, how to find it. The best stories, should be no surprise to you at this juncture, are about people. So here's some questions to ask yourself. How and why did you get into this business? There's a story there. You didn't just end up in this business. Let's talk about how and why you got into it. What's your background? Does that background have some bearing on how you do things, why you do things the way that you do? Have you learned any profound lessons along the way? And if you have, how and why? What was the situation? There's so many stories. I remember hearing Jim Rohn. You've heard me reference him multiple times over the course of the seminars and webinars that I do. But Jim Rohn is the great late business philosopher and motivational speaker. And he always talks about when you're in a company trying to motivate your employees and talking to them. And he says, we always tend to focus on the numbers. We did $10 million in sales last year, and we look at the numbers. How many people did we see, and what was our closing ratios, and how did we do compared to last year, and what's our vision for next year? And this is the numbers. And he says, but $10 million of sales represents a tremendous amount of effort by a lot of people, and there's a lot of stories in that $10 million. What are those stories? Can you pick out the ones internally that might be interesting as you motivate your team, but from a marketing perspective, stories externally that might be a little bit more interesting? One of the things that we tell our customers is we tell them why we sell things that we sell. when we show up to a seminar and we say, look, we've got an insider package and we do your identity and we'll create your website and pre-positioning and home shows and all these other things, search engine, all the things that we do, it's really easy for a prospect to look at that and say, okay, well, they sell all this stuff. And then, of course, we tell them that we do it good and we're better than other companies and all the things that any company would try to communicate about their services. And I found that when we step back, now this is just me and my story, but I want you to look at you and your story. And when I say, look, here's why we sell this stuff. We're a training company by heart and by nature. We're a consulting company in our DNA. And we don't do websites. We're not an SEO company. We're not a company that does pay-per-click management. That's not what we set out to do in life. We set out to help people with their marketing, and we chose a vehicle of training. But we found that there was a problem with training, which is that people love our training. They like our training. They participate in the training, but they have a really hard time taking what they've learned and translating it into actionable things that they actually complete and that makes a difference in their business. So we looked at that and said, if that's the net result of what we do, is that people like it but don't actually do anything with it, then that's a problem. And we looked and saw, where do people need the help the most? And we found that people are starved for time, they're starved for attention, they've got lots of things going on, but they want and need the MYM principles integrated into their business. So we made a business decision that we would actually do those things, and we've become experts, and we've drawn the resources in to be able to do all those things, to combine it into a package, to do it well, to do it inexpensively, and to get it done quickly. And that's why we sell what we sell. So if it looks like I'm trying to sell you, this is my sales pitch, I'm not talking to you right now, I'm talking as if I were giving a sales pitch. If it sounds like I'm trying to sell you, and it sounds like I'm saying that we're the best at what we do, understand, the only reason we even sell this stuff is because we could not find a viable resource in the marketplace to do it. We had to, by definition and by default, to produce this stuff, or you couldn't get it. It's simply not available anywhere else. Now, you listen to that and you say, well, you know, Rich, I've heard you talk before, and you tell all these stories about the Ford Excursion you bought and how your kids called it Shrek, and your kid who went to the bathroom behind a tree, and we heard your story about your daughter who plays volleyball and the guy who you threatened on a video on his phone that if he did anything to your daughter, you were going to shoot him. And, you know, you tell all these stories, and isn't that what you mean when you say tell a story? And the answer is, yeah, sometimes that's what I mean when I say tell a story. A lot of times what I mean when I say tell a story, though, is just explain what's going on. How did you get where you're going? Why are you even selling what you sell? Drew, I see you're on the call today. Drew Bartow, thanks for getting on here today. I mean, it's such a great example, your company, Energy Swing Window, and I'm going to actually show some of your stuff a little bit later. You've got this phenomenal story of a guy who started this company building a window that he felt needed to exist in the marketplace. It didn't exist, so he built a company around the need, and his pitch to the prospects is, I'm not saying that we're anything awesome or great. I mean, we are. What I'm saying is we're the only company that saw this need and produced this window, and we don't really know why other people don't do it either. It's so obvious. I mean, there's some patent issues that probably prevents them. But we're only here because you need this. And it's an interesting story, and there's a lot more to that story, and we'll talk about it as I show some examples a little bit later. But I want you to just look at your company. Look at the background. You know, if you're not the owner of the company, I recommend you sit down with the owners and find out, how did you get here? What do you know, where did you come from? All right, let's keep going here. What personality traits define you as a person? So, again, if we were talking about you as the owner of the company, we said, well, what, you know, if you asked 25 people that know you to describe you in one word, what would be that word? And that's going to be very interesting, and it's going to tell us a lot. And you know what? Here's the funny thing. It doesn't even always have to be a positive word. I'll show you an identity a little bit later from a guy who hates running a business. He can't stand running a business. And you look at that and say, well, that's kind of a weakness, but we can turn that into a strength. I'll show you that example. But ask yourself, what personality traits defines you as a person? Tell me about the time that you ... Well, what are you talking about, Rich? Well, tell me about the time that you, something that is interesting and profound in your company. Tell me about the time, there's an example that I don't actually think I put this in the seminar, in this webinar, so I'll just tell you. I had a client, this is going back about 5, 6, 7 years, and their company slogan was, "We take the risk out of home improvement." And it's a pretty good slogan, but once you get past the slogan, there's got to be some depth to it. Because when you say we take the risk out of home improvement, it's a platitude. And it's okay, if you go back to my platitudes revisited from a couple of weeks ago, there's a time and a place for a platitude. And the slogan is one where it's okay, but we've got to quickly be able to explain and discuss and help people understand. And there's stories behind this. And I asked this guy, well, tell me about a time when you took the risk out of home improvement. And he told me the story about the time when the sunroom was installed improperly, and it rained hard and it leaked, and the guy happened to be a 4-star general, and his whole room was ruined, and his flooring and his furniture and his fixtures and everything. And they dropped everything, and they went and they redid this room, and they put a tremendous amount of time, effort, money, and attention into getting this done right, because that's just the way that they roll. And even going further back, how did they get into this business? The guy had been a salesman in the home improvement industry for years, but he really loathed the way that the industry did business, and he hated his company and his boss and the way that they made him sell hard, and it just didn't fit his personality, and it just didn't feel right, and it just wasn't the way that he felt business should be done. And so he started his own company to alleviate that, and he got into this business, and he swore that he would treat people right and do whatever it took, and he wouldn't use stupid pricing games and all that stuff. And and then that experience with the sunroom, and these stories are so valuable, and you can tell them in your marketing, on your website, in your advertisements, and they become very, very powerful as elements of helping people understand exactly who you are. If I say that I'm the persnickety remodeler and I refuse to compromise on quality, that's one way to say something. If I say I ripped out the cabinets in disgust because the color wasn't exactly right, and then I tell a story about how I went into the customer's kitchen. We had just installed the cabinets, and I looked at them, and they just didn't look 100% right. And I went over to the customer, and I said, well, what do you think about these cabinets? And she said, they look good, but she hedged for a half a second before she said it. And I knew that she didn't like it, and I knew it wasn't perfect. And I said, you know what? I'm going to be real honest with you. I absolutely hate those cabinets. And she looked a little surprised and a little bit perplexed that I would say that about the cabinets that I just installed. And I said, you know what? The fact is that they're about 1/100th of a shade too dark. And I know what you want, because we sat down and talked, and this is not what you asked for, and this is not what you ordered. And we're going to do it again. So they took all the cabinets down. They took them back to the shop. They sanded them all down. They restained them the right color, and they brought them in. And the customer could not believe the time and attention, not to mention the obvious cost involved with doing such a thing. But see, here's the interesting thing. That story exists in your past. You've got that story. Whatever your story is, you've got that story. But that story is only valuable if you tell it. It's not valuable if it's locked away. You think about your family, and you're raising kids, and you've got all of this experience and wealth of knowledge and information and things that you've done and experienced, and you've won and you've lost and you've hurt and you've soared and all these things. And if you just take that and bottle it up and you don't ever share that with your kids, the experience is really wasted. And it doesn't help anybody. You say, no, it helps me because I'm better and I'm stronger. Well, that's good. But if you're in a marketing environment, your prospects don't know that you're better and you're stronger, how would they know that? They don't know you. And if you use the black and white treatment, if you use the antiseptic treatment, if you use the just the facts man treatment in describing who you are and what you do, they have no way of knowing that depth and richness of character that you've earned over the years, that's made you who you are, that's given you that strength of character, and you probably ought to share that with them. That's all I'm trying to say here, okay? Tell me about that time. Why are you so adamant about this? You know, whatever this might happen to be. And find that story, okay? So let's keep moving on here. Elements of good stories. Number one, first person whenever possible. Now, this isn't always possible, and, you know, I'm giving you a list here, and this list you can see by the size of this bullet point on this screen is going to be about, I don't know, eight or nine probably points on this list. You don't have to put every single point on this list into every single story you tell. This is the general principles of good stories, okay? So that being said, let's try to take this as a principle-based discussion and use first person whenever possible. If it's not possible sometime for some reason, then don't use it. It's okay. But that's the default that we want to go to. Powerful, believable, credible voice. Now, first person is just somebody saying, here's what I do. Here's my situation. Here's what I experienced. Here's what I've done. And, you know, there's part of you and maybe things you've heard in the past to say, oh, well, nobody wants to hear about you. That, you know, if it's all about me, shouldn't the message be about the prospect and about them and their problems? Well, the story, by definition, is going to be about you. And it's going to, by definition, explain how you solve their problem. So it is about them, okay? It is about them. You start in the problem. This is something else I learned about Jim Rohn. He says, start where the person is. If you're trying to help somebody, start where they're at, and then take them where you want them to go. If they're in pain, start in the pain. You can't start with the solution for people that are in pain. You have to go into the pain with them, but you can't go into the pain with them unless you've experienced the pain. And if you've experienced the pain, the best way to relate to them is to share your pain so that they know that you are there with them and that you understand and you empathize and you can see what they see and feel what they feel. And that's what this storytelling is all about. That's why when we say we take the risk out of home improvement and we tell the story about how I used to be this guy that sold windows, and I'm actually ashamed of myself for the way I treated people. And I actually felt like I had to go to church and repent. And I started my own company, and I swore that we wouldn't do that. And I've been good to that promise. And here's a situation where it happened. And it's a pretty extreme situation, and we don't have those kinds of things happen all the time. But you know what? We're humans, and things happen. But I'll tell you what, if something happens, I guarantee you, I promise, it's in my DNA. It will be fixed. And people hear that, and they go, wow, that's just all I'm looking for. I just want to feel like I'm taken care of. I want to feel like I'm dealing with somebody that cares. And clearly you care. I can tell because you gave me enough richness and detail in that story that I believe it. And it's a credible voice, and it's powerful, okay? All right, let's keep going here. Using plain English. You know, this is one of the staples of MYM, just dialogue. Acknowledge faults and weaknesses. Again, this goes to what I was just saying about meeting people in the pain and acknowledging faults. I mean, I mean, of course, I knew this bullet point was on there, but I wasn't thinking about it a minute ago. It's so ingrained into the way that I communicate and the way that I write these stories. You know, to tell people I was ashamed of the way that I treated people in that story a minute ago. It's so powerful. It's so powerful when you say, I'm ashamed of the way I treated people. And they look at you and they go, wow, this guy has just borne his soul to me. He's exposed his underbelly, his soft parts. That's not very normal. And it's so different, and it's so unexpected, and it's so genuine that it endears people, and they just melt. Not because you're lying to them, but because, man, this is just the way that people like to be communicated with, okay? Show your human side. Use analogies when you can. This is one thing I do well, and I do it well in my clients' work, my clients' writing, things that we put together for them. Use an analogy. Use an analogy, okay? We won't go into detail there. Vivid, specific language. Give the details, okay? The guy was a 4-star general. His entire sunroom leaked It rained 1.5 inches in 2 hours, a tremendous downpour. His carpet that he had just spent $3,000 on was ruined. His antique table, whatever. Use details. Expose problems in the industry, unexpected twists. And here's what I found. The truth is powerful. This isn't about making crap up. This isn't about trying to say something that's not genuine. This is about looking in the mirror, looking at your company and saying, you know what, we've worked hard enough that we've got a good enough solution that we can be honest about who we are. We can show our warts. We can admit our weaknesses. Because, if you admit your weaknesses, you don't have a lot of current weaknesses to expose because you've fixed them ostensibly. They're in your past. And when you show that you've got weakness in the past, well, boy, that's powerful right there, okay? So let's take a look at a couple. These are just some mock-ups that we've done, and we're not going to spend 1,000,000 hours on each of them, but let's just kind of look at it. Brighton Home Products was started in 1955 when pride and workmanship still mattered. People followed through on promises, and a man's word was his bond. For us, nothing has changed. We don't cut corners. We have a firm no-pressure sales policy in writing. We charge fair, honest prices and not a penny more. If you want stress-free, total peace of mind remodeling, you've come to the right place. We've got a visual of the old store. And you'll see that I use this language a lot in these kinds of pieces. Let's face it, it's tough to find an honest, reliable, trustworthy company. Everyone's heard horror stories about projects that drag, final bills that are more than the promised quote, workmanship is far less than excellent. On top of that, many companies put you through the ringer just to get the quote. The entire process can be downright intimidating. Say hello again to 1955 values, the values that your grandparents taught by example and that made this country great, honor, integrity, responsibility. And then they talk about how that's where they came from. Let's just go through several examples here. Butler Home Improvement with a woman's touch. I can guarantee you a pleasant, stress-free, no-pressure project from the first sales call to the final walkthrough. Male contractors seem to want to hurry up and get it done. I'm more interested in making sure you absolutely love your project. And you know what? This is something that people read, and they just based on their experience with humans and males and females, they look at that and they go, you know what? She's totally right. I don't even know her, but I'm guessing that that's true. I have to be honest with you. I have mixed feelings about promoting the fact that I'm a woman, and this is a woman-owned business. After all, some people might feel like a woman isn't qualified to run a home improvement company. Other people might just shrug their shoulders and say, who cares? But then again, it might help you recognize and understand how differently we do things. I absolutely hate when salesmen try to take advantage of me, so I instituted a strict no tricks, no pressure sales policy. I don't want people to ever have to worry about the products we sell for as long as they live, so I made sure we have the longest warranties in the business. It probably also explains why I have all my employees over for a Halloween party every year. I'm a woman who's wired like a woman. But don't mistake kindness for pushover. I demand more from my employees than anyone else, male or female. We only hire the best people, and we expect a lot from them. What a great story. Showing the weakness. I'm not sure if I should even tell you that I'm a woman-owned business. But you know what? There's just enough differences in things that we do that maybe you'll find it to be valuable. And the story becomes interesting. Here's a dentist. Talked to this dentist. I said, why do people do business with you? I'm gentle. I'm compassionate. Pain-free. I'm non-judgmental. What do you mean non-judgmental? Well, if they got crappy teeth, I don't make them feel like a schmo for having bad teeth. Okay. I asked him, what's your background? Now, read this story. My only concern is that you feel relaxed and comfortable. We offer pain-free dentistry and flexible scheduling options. Since I was 5 years old, all I ever wanted to be was a dentist. After 40 years in practice, I still can't wait to go to work every single day. Does it really matter how a dentist feels about dentistry? I know it's kind of a weird question, but I think it's an extremely important one. You see, many dentists get into dentistry because they like working with their hands, or their dad was a dentist, or it seemed like a good, respectable profession. And there are a lot of good dentists out there, but I think it's pretty safe to say that very few children have ever answered, what do you want to be when you grow up question by saying, I want to be a dentist, except me. When I was a little kid, I had bad teeth, really bad teeth. My parents took me to Dr. Asher Sharrow. There's those details I was talking about, remember? Here in Chicago, I'll never forget how he treated me, like a person, not like a little kid. He talked to me. I mean, this is like bearing his soul. He talked to me and made me feel important and confident. I decided then and there, before I turned 10 years old, that I wanted to be a dentist when I grew up. And now, after 40 years of practice, I can honestly say that I still love being a dentist. I like teeth, don't get me wrong, but what I really care about is people. I love talking to them, helping them, and making them feel confident. That's just how I feel about it. That's why we strive to do everything right. We only hire the most caring, compassionate staff members, no exceptions. We offer all forms of sedation, so you never have to be in pain. We work 6 days a week, including Saturdays, so you can work us into your busy schedule. We have multiple payment options, even if you don't have insurance, and we never judge, no matter the problem with your teeth. We're here to help. That's how people who love dentistry run a dental practice. That's how we run ours. Thanks for visiting our website. We look forward to serving you. Wow, and then when you put something like treat you like family, patient pledge, it means something. There's a lot of depth to it now. And I'm telling you, it's awesome. But I'm also going to tell you this. This is a frustrating, sad, discouraging thing for me. Many, many times, including this example that you're seeing on your screen right now, we put it together in our clients because it's so different than what they're used to saying or doing or what they expect a marketing piece to look like. They won't use it. They don't use it. They say, well, nobody's going to read all that stuff, or, I don't want to tell that story, or that story's too personal. Yeah, but you told me that story, and it tells me why you are the way you are. It makes the fact that you're gentle, compassionate, pain-free, and non-judgmental really believable. Because anybody can say that, but when I hear the story about you're a kid with bad teeth and Dr. Ash or Shero treated you not like a kid but like a person, I just melt. And I say, that's where I want my kids to go. And that's where I want to go. That's who I want to be like when I grow up. Wow, this is something really special here. And it's sad for me to see it not be used. Would you be surprised to learn Portland's largest, fastest growing, and most respected home improvement company is owned by a woman? Oh, there we go with the woman-owned business thing again. My sense of compassion has led to our no-pressure sales approach. Our desire to educate customers, our fair pricing policy. My demand for perfection has led to the industry's best-trained workers, unheard of 50-year warranties, and dominant market share. Okay, we won't go into detail. It's kind of similar to the other one. All right, this is the one where the weakness turns into the strength. Welcome to the bend over backwards, do whatever it takes, refuse to nickel and dime, only the best will do, no pricing gains or sales pressure window company. I'm a craftsman first and a business person second. It's in my nature to choose perfection over profitability. My accountant hates me. My customers love me. Guess who I listen to? It's the little things that make the difference, right? That's why when it comes to replacing your windows, I'm obsessed with making sure every little detail is exactly right, even though doing so gets me in trouble with my accountant. What? Unexpected twist. Let me give you a few examples. If I find dry rot hidden inside your windowsills, 10 times out of 10, I'll just repair the wood without even telling you, instead of charging you an extra $100 like others would. If a window is 1/16 of an inch out of square, I can tell just by looking, and I'd never dream of leaving it that way, even though I'll have to take an extra 45 minutes to fix it. My accountant says, charge the customer for it. I say, no way. I give all my customers a lifetime warranty on their windows, including the labor, which my accountant says is the dumbest thing I could ever do. He says that's too much future liability, but I disagree. He doesn't know how to install a window, and I do. I know it. If I install it properly the first time, it absolutely will last a lifetime. And if not, then I deserve to have to incur the cost of doing it again later. But that never happens. My pride won't let it, and I just do it right the first time. I admit it right up front. I'm a terrible salesperson, and I don't negotiate. I don't know how much a great window with great installation should cost. Oh, excuse me. I know how much a great window with a great installation should cost, and I'll quote you that exact amount. Please don't try to negotiate with me because I know I'll lose because I find it almost impossible to say no. But I'll make you a promise. The price will be fair, and I won't put any sales pressure on you. I don't even really know how. So give me a call. You can talk to me directly, the owner. I'd be honored to take a look at your project and give you a quote. Sincerely, Brad Fitzgerald. What a great story. It seems like something you wouldn't want to tell people. I'm not a great business person. But when you put it in this context of I'm not a great business person, and I show the benefit to you is that you're going to get a good deal and an excellent install from a person who's meticulous about it. Then you look at it and go, wow, this is very interesting. Here's another one. This is the one that actually inspired the one that I did for the dentist. The only roofer in Florida that requires no deposit and offers a standard 10-year labor warranty. You never pay a dime until you're 100% satisfied. That's your assurance that the job will be done on time and on budget. So those are some good identity points there. But then we get into the story here. I'm a roofer by birth. I remain a roofer by choice. My father taught me the right way is the only way. Does it really matter how a roofer feels about roofing? Remember, it's very similar to the dentist. I know it's kind of a weird question, but I think it's an extremely important one. You see, most roofers fall into roofing because they think it's easy money or because they couldn't figure out anything else to do with their life. It's pretty safe to say that no child ever answered the what do you want to do when you grow up question by saying, I want to be a roofer, except me. My dad was a roofer. And when I was a kid, I couldn't wait to get home from school so I could ride with him to give estimates or check on job sites. He actually started paying me when I was 16, and I've been a professional roofer ever since, over 35 years now. I can honestly say that I love roofing. To me, a roof is like a canvas. There's an art to it. When I see how some roofers treat, no, there's a typo there. It makes me angry. That's just how I feel about it. That's why we strive to do everything right. We only use the best materials. We never cut corners. We only use highly experienced employees. We never pick up day laborers like others do. We never apply sales pressure. We always guarantee our prices in writing. See, all of these claims now have a lot more weight to them in the context of, I love this and I'm passionate about it. Who ever heard of a roofer that is a roofer because he wants to be a roofer? That's a pretty interesting discussion. All right, here's one where a guy has a background as a cabinet maker. 35 years ago, I started out as a cabinet maker, not a remodeler. That's where I developed my absolute insistence on precision, tight tolerances, and strict accuracy. By the way, words that came directly from the client. Those are the same exacting standards I still demand on all projects for my customers today. Done right isn't good enough. Done exactly right is my minimum standard. Let's face it, there are plenty of remodelers out there who just want to get in and out of your home as quickly as possible so they can get out of the next job and next paycheck. Then there are remodelers like me who treat every job like a work of art. They're consumed with getting all the details exactly right. No detail is too small to go unchecked. When I started in this industry as a cabinet maker over 35 years ago, I quickly became known as the perfectionist. That's because, in my opinion, when it comes to cabinets, you can never be too precise. Gaps are unacceptable. Loose tolerances look terrible. On more than one occasion, I ripped the cabinets out and started again from scratch. That's the curse of the perfectionist. Funny thing, my customers seem to love it. See? Interesting. Flawless. Here's a guy that was a CPA as a background. Well, let's see how we turn that into a story. Flawless. My methodical, thoroughly thorough, borderline OCD process and procedures will ensure your project is flawless every time. Before I started this company in 2000, I was a CPA for 17 years. My personality and training only allow me to do things one way, the right way. Let's face it, home improvement is an industry with a bad reputation. Shoddy workmanship, broken promises, and disappointing results are all too common. That's why everyone I know was shocked beyond belief in September 2000. See this story? When I dropped out of the corporate rat race and started selling roofing, siding, and windows. They said I was crazy to join the ranks of such an unwieldy profession. But I was undaunted. I knew exactly what I was doing. You see, my background is a certified public accountant, a profession that absolutely demands unqualified precision. I figured that if I could bring my passion for order, methodology, and systems to an industry that seemed to have none, my business would be a smashing success. After all, who wouldn't want their home improvement project to be predictable and stress-free? Okay? See how that works? The window nerd. We just take these guys and tell their story. It's interesting. I know as much about windows as anyone or fact. Sales situations make me really uncomfortable. Result, you get the best windows without the dog and pony show. I've been in the window business just about forever. I know every single thing a human could possibly know about windows. I know the best brands. I know which brands to avoid. I know everything about proper installation and what things can go wrong in installation. Let's put it this way. I've forgotten more about windows than 90% of window guys ever knew in the first place. But as much as I love windows, I can't stand selling. I've been around long enough to know all the tricks. I've seen all the sales training boot camps. I know how some companies give big fake discounts, but only if you buy tonight. I hate it. It makes me uncomfortable. To be honest, it makes me sweaty and nervous. I hate asking for the sale. I figure if you want my windows, you'll tell me. As it turns out, a lot of people seem to like buying windows from a window nerd. I can give you a quote over the phone if you want. I can come out to your house and demo the windows if you want. I can spend 5 minutes telling you about the window, or if you're an engineer and want to know everything about the details, I can spend hours with you. It's totally up to you. Interesting story. Now, on his About Us page, there's a story about how he was in the ministry and how he had to drop out to support his family. And we tie that ministry, honesty, Christian living. He said, well, I don't know if I'd want to put that in my marketing. Well, that's him. That's what he does. It's his background. It's the truth. Okay, here you go, Drew. This is window energy swing. Every once in a while, you find that one company that literally does everything right. Now, you can look at this here on the screen, and you can go to their website and see this. I want to talk a little bit more about some of the other sections of this website. Okay, if you look down here in the middle, it says how we beat the pants off of every other window company in Pittsburgh. The easiest to clean, most energy efficient window, highest customer satisfaction ratings, off the charts amazing. And if you look at the sections here, whoops, losing my technology here. Let's go back to it. Window companies love to talk about their incredible lifetime warranties. The only thing incredible about them is they can legally call them lifetime. Don't get suckered by a bunch of loopholes, exclusions, and fine print that you can't read. And it talks about in detail how they do their warranties. For sake of time, I'm not going to look at this in detail, but go to their website and take a look. It's kind of interesting stuff. Introducing the planet's only swing-in window. Comparing swing-in to traditional tilt is like comparing computer versus typewriter, car versus horse and buggy, smartphone versus rotary phone. This is an easy, quick way using an analogy to help people understand that, yeah, this is really, orders of magnitude different than the status quo. We're the only company in Pittsburgh that sells it, makes it, installs it, warrants all three aspects. Single source supplier means single source responsibility. This is the page I want to show you. This is an interesting little story I wrote. I talked to the owner, Steve Rennenkamp, who's there in the picture. And I asked him those same questions that we talked about earlier. Tell me about your background. How did you start this company? Why are you even in this business? And I found a very interesting backstory. And I wrote it into the story, how a nerdy engineer trapped in a basketball player's body absolutely revolutionized the window world. Well, that's an interesting way to start a discussion. A nerdy engineer trapped in a basketball player's body. Now, look at the way that this story starts. I love the way this story starts. Drew, I'm glad you're on the call because, I don't know, I like this story. 6'8". I've probably been asked, how tall are you? Somewhere between 50,000 and 150,000 times in the last 40-plus years. And yes, I did play basketball, the second most common question I get asked, even though I didn't particularly like basketball, at least not in the beginning. What an interesting way to start a story. You see, my take it or leave it attitude towards basketball has a lot to do with how and why I created the biggest breakthrough in window technology in the last 40 years, the swinging window that swings open like a door for extreme ease of cleaning and enhanced energy efficiency. I was born in 1947. Like many kids in my era, my parents taught me the value of good old-fashioned work, hard work, and doing things the right way. My father was a machinist who was always tinkering around the house with some sort of construction project or auto repair, and he always included me. So the tinkering bug bit me too. As a boy, I found myself taking things apart, putting them back together, trying to figure out. Now, you might look at this and say, well, this is a lot of detail. Why would you tell people this, right up front? And the answer is we wouldn't. This is on the About Us page of this website. So they get a feel for who this company is, how they do things, and then we come in on the About Us page and we put this very detailed, a lot of information story that if people don't want to read it, they're under no obligation to do so. But now, in the context of everything they've already seen and read and found out and discovered about this company, they now find out this story about this person who created it, and they go, wow, I get it now. I see why this company is so good. So it goes on to tell the rest of the story. We won't read it right now, but it talks about how he got really tall and he went out for basketball. He realized that if he worked hard at it, he could get a scholarship, and that could help him fulfill his dreams of being an engineer. And he did that, and he actually got good at basketball, and he got to where he loved it, but he had to fight through it, and he worked, and learned that hard work pays off. It's a good little story, and it humanizes this company and this person that runs this company. I love the picture of him there with the cardboard cutout of himself when he was a younger man. It's just interesting. And even if people look at this story and they go, well, I don't want to read all that, and they read just a little bit of it, they go, wow, this guy seems real. That's what we're looking for. Here's another story about nerds. We seem to find a lot of nerds in the home improvement industry. Between our engineering backgrounds and our mother's tough love, building the highest quality closet organizers in Memphis was absolutely inevitable. How two nerds from Memphis built a closet organizer empire, an 18-year overnight success by Brad Davidson. And he tells a story about how they started this business. They were nerds. They didn't know each other, but they both went to engineering school. They ended up working for the same company. They got to know each other. The company went out of business for reasons that were out of their control. They went to the owner, asked if they could take over the company. They did. They started selling shoddy workmanship cabinets, closet organization because of the advice of a business advisor who told them they had to sell cheap. And if they didn't sell it cheap, nobody would buy it. So they did that. And then Brad's mother called him up one day, started chewing him out because a lady at church that she had recommended use him for closets had a bad experience, and they were crappy closets and they were breaking down, and now she looked bad. And they looked at each other and said, you know what, we're engineers. We know how to do it better, and we know that you should do it better, but we thought based on bad business advice that if we sold expensive, high-quality, well-engineered cabinets and closets that people wouldn't buy them. But you know what, the heck with that. We're going to build them the way that we know they should be built, and if people don't want to buy them, I guess we'll go out of business. But, oh, guess what? Turns out people like those kind. And it's an interesting little story, okay? In advertising, let's talk about how to tell some stories in advertising. Now, what we don't necessarily want to do is tell your entire backstory in advertising, but look at just scenarios to get people interested in listening. Instead of saying, this is for a home improvement company, instead of saying, hey, we're expensive, but we're worth it. You come in here and say stuff like this. What if you or someone you love needed brain surgery? Would you shop around trying to find the cheapest brain surgeon? Do you really want half-price brain surgery? Of course not, because there are some things in life you simply don't want the cheapest. You don't want the cheapest car. You don't want the cheapest mattress. You don't want the cheapest wedding dress, and you certainly don't want the cheapest brain surgeon. So why on earth would you want the cheapest replacement window, siding, or roof for your home? The cheapest guy is almost certainly the worst at what he does. He probably doesn't have insurance. He uses cheap, flimsy, crummy materials. Won't give you a warranty worth a hill of beans. But, hey, it's cheap. Do this instead. Call Gordner, blah, blah, blah. Okay? And the call, contact. Here's another version, different ad. What if they built a new bridge on the freeway? Analogy. But instead of using reinforced steel and concrete, they decided to go cheap and use styrofoam beams reinforced with baling wire and silly putty. Then let's say they paint the bridge so it looked all pretty and new. Would you be excited to drive your 4,000-pound car over it? Well, geez, probably not. Sometimes it's what's on the inside and you can't see that's more important than what's on the outside and easy to see. For example, installation of windows, doors, siding, and roofing. You'd be surprised how many contractors go the styrofoam and baling wire route. They know you'll never look under the shingles or around the windows, so they cut corners and do the job cheap. Then when your roof leaks or your windows prematurely fail, they're gone. Trust Bordner instead. We've completed over X number of jobs, okay? Here's an interesting little story. This is for an air conditioning company. I was a Boy Scout when I was a kid. We'd go camping a lot. When we pack up to leave, our scoutmaster would always remind us, leave it cleaner than you found it. We'd hunt for bottle caps and pull tabs and bread ties, stuff we hadn't put there, but stuff that we're willing to find and haul out so we could fulfill our duty to leave it cleaner than we found it. And you know what? That philosophy has stuck with me. How do you come up with this philosophy? I asked the owner. At Horizon Services, when I come to your home, I can absolutely guarantee we're going to leave your home cleaner than we found it. We always wear bright orange booties, protect the work area with a drop cloth. We wipe everything down and completely clean up any mess caused by the repair. The story about the Boy Scout has now made the person more interested and willing and engaged to listen to what we do. What if we just came in on this commercial and said, hey, we leave things cleaner than we found it. We put, a drop cloth down and wear bright orange booties. People would hear and they go, okay, whatever, good. But this is more powerful with the story. The other day, my wife and I were looking at pictures of I'll move this over on my screen, of our 19-year-old son from when he's a little kid. There's one particular picture, you know what I'm talking about, where he was 7 years old and he just looked so small and cute and innocent. Now he's moved out of the house. He's bigger than I am, and he can grow a full beard in a week. It seems like forever ago that sweet little boy in the picture Think about it, 12 years. That's a long time. Where's my cursor? It's also how long our warranty lasts, okay? And we tell this story. It's almost a tearjerker. You want to know why Horizon Services is never late for heater repair, plumbing service? Because when I was a kid, it's a good way to start a story. My mother had a zero tolerance for being late. Her motto was early is on time is late, and late is unacceptable. If I heard it once, I heard it 1,000 times. Early is on time is late, and late is unacceptable. That's why Horizon Service is the only on-time or it's 100% free guarantee. No fine print, no hoops to jump through, just free. Other companies will call you with excuses when a job runs late or traffic is bad. If a Horizon technician is running late, no problem. We'll just send another one of our 200-plus trucks to your house instead, because I mean it. Early is on time is late, and late is unacceptable. It's an interesting little story. Okay, here's one. This is the sunroom guy that tore down the sunroom, but this is a different story. Why November might be the best time to add a sunroom. Our November and December sales volume is usually 70% less than the rest of the year. This year, as part of a daring test, I'm willing to give you a bona fide 20% off so we can keep our crews busy. And then it tells the story. I don't want to go into detail on this because I think we're kind of getting the point here, and we're getting close to the end of the webinar. So we're just telling the story about not just, hey, it's the end of the season and nobody's buying, but we give the details. Details like normally we sell 12 to 18. We average 15. In November we sold 5. In December we sold 4 last year. That's the problem. I met with my management team to discuss solutions. We thought it would be better to give it away at cost than to have to lay off our staff and then try to hire them back again later. So we're going to try this. We don't know if it's going to work. It might work. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, I guess we look dumb. Blog posting. This is a blog that I wrote just last week. It goes on Qualified Remodeler website. And I'm trying to make a point that there's 6 different major elements of expertise that you have to run a home improvement business. You have to have sales ability, sales management ability, finance, production, operations, and marketing. And I'm trying to make this point. So I could just come in and I could just say, hey, look, there's 6 things you need to know. And marketing's the hardest one. But here's how I started. Let's tell a story. I've met exactly one marketing genius in the remodeling industry since I began specializing in remodeling in 2005. His name is Brian Elias, the charismatic owner of Hanson's Windows in Detroit. He's built an impressive business, somewhere in the neighborhood of $70 million a year, not by having better products or service than everyone else, but by lapping the field in marketing. Then we go on to tell the story. At breakfast with Brian last September at a hole-in-the-wall diner near his office. What impressed me most was not Brian's grand plans, he has many, or his mountains of success, ditto. What caught me totally off guard was how everyone reacted to him. The window salesman turned TV star had the entire diner craning their necks, pointing fingers, and whispering, "It's that guy from TV," in hushed tones. The waitress was clearly starstruck. After asking for his autograph, she requested a picture with him so she could text it to her daughter. The commotion was about on par with what you'd expect from, say, Neil Diamond or Chevy Chase. It's a story. Trying to make a point, let's find a story that illustrates the point. You thought the Kardashians were famous for no reason. This is a guy who sells windows, siding, and roofing for a living in Detroit. Okay? All right, on-hold messages. I don't want to go through this in detail. So I think we're going to end it up here. Here's what I want to encourage you to do. I want you to look at your business. I want you to look at the types of stories and analogies that you could come up with and start to craft them into your marketing, whether it's into blog postings or articles or advertisements, whatever the case is. You've got stories to tell. Mine them and tell them. Remember what I said earlier on this webinar. If you've got all the experience in the world, but you don't take the time to tell people, then there's no value to them. They've got to hear the story. So find those stories, communicate them in a powerful way, use plain English, use specificity, and you'll be on to something. So that's what I've got for you today. We'll be back at you. I think we're off next week. We'll be back at you the week after next, and we'll keep this train rolling. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you later. Bye now.
The organizer has ended the